With elections less than a month away, we want to make sure you are prepared for the big day. Your voice and your vote is important. Who better to keep us in the know than the person responsible for overseeing the state's election process, including voter registration and election results reporting. Joining me now is the West Virginia Secretary of State, Mac Warner. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
So everyone is excited. There's a lot of talk about the upcoming election, but there's a lot of work that goes into making this happen. What have you been busy doing?
The preparation for an election never stops. It's year-round, especially with the county clerks. They're always updating their voter registration list, taking names off if people have died or moved out of state, that sort of thing. They're getting ready with the election equipment. We are updating the equipment throughout the state. I'm happy to report that we don't use Dominion voting machines. Here recently it's Connect, and people had stored stuff in China. We don't use any of that, so we're in good shape as far as that goes. And in fact, we're continuing to work with improving the election equipment. About 75% of the people in West Virginia right now already vote on the most advanced, best equipment. And in fact, we're meeting again tomorrow, the State Elections Commission, to approve the HAVA board. HAVA is the Help America Vote Act money that Congress gives to the states to update their equipment. So we're getting that out to some more, about 8 or 9 more counties. So as we speak, I think we're heading towards about an 85-90% of the people in West Virginia will be voting on these. What it amounts to is an electronic marking device. So you hear people say we need to return to paper ballots. Well, we've got paper ballots, but if you think of taking the ACT test back in high school, you'd fill in an oval. Well, what if you're supposed to vote for one, but somebody fills in 2 ovals? Well, you've just invalidated your vote. An electronic marking device doesn't allow you to vote for more people than you're supposed to. And if you undervote, it will remind you, hey, you're allowed to vote for, say, 2 people on a city council race, that sort of thing. So that's why I love this equipment. And it gives you a voter-verified paper trail. So the voter actually gets to see that ballot before they put it into the tabulator. And when the voter puts that in the tabulator themselves, they know their vote's going to be counted. So everybody gets to vote once, but only once. And that's what we're doing in the off season, is to get the equipment in, get the clerks trained on it, and then the clerks start training the poll workers. So this process just goes on throughout the year. Then the county commissions are involved with regards to, one, making sure the machines are zeroed out, they're validated before. There's public testing that takes place prior to the election. All that sort of thing has to be scheduled, announcements made, and so on. So there's a lot of preparation in the poll workers. We'll talk about that, I'm sure. Getting them onto the list and prepared, ready to go. The clerks have to be ready for the precincts where people actually vote, accessible to folks with disabilities, make sure there's running water, all these sorts of things. And sometimes sometimes there's been a flood or an electrical outage, and the clerks have to take care of all of that, get it into consideration to be ready for early voting and then on election day. So a lot of preparation goes into getting ready for an election.
Yeah, and a lot of things that we likely don't think about, but in talking about making everyone feel secure that their vote is actually going to count, it sounds like this new technology is actually going to help with that. What other things are being done to just bring more confidence into the election process to make sure that people can trust the actual results?
Great question, because there is a lot of discern, not just from 2020, but back in 2016. Both sides have argued, their votes, were tampered with or messed with and that sort of thing. But I can tell you from West Virginia's perspective, okay, we have got free, fair, clean elections. The equipment is great. I work with not only the county clerks, but also at the national level. I work with other secretaries of state. I have routine meetings and phone calls and Zoom calls with the Department of Homeland Security. There's an agency called CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, who's responsible for oversight of the elections, and they're the ones keeping track of Russia, Iran, China, that sort of hacking. They have put out that there is increased efforts to try to hack into our elections. We saw it in 2016, 2020, but they're on top of it. So even though there are increased efforts to attack, we know what to watch for, we're on top of it, we're keeping it out, and just last week they put out a notice that says, we're seeing increased activity, but there is no reason to think that anybody's actually penetrating our election systems, and certainly no changing of votes. We don't have one case anywhere of a vote being changed electronically. And so I can assure the people of West Virginia that their elections are secure. We want to make it as easy as possible for people to vote and really hard to cheat.
Right, and I am, for social media at least, seeing a lot less of that propaganda that we saw from the last election. So there seems to be a lot less, and I guess the social media companies are cracking down on it from that angle as well, which is good because that would impact us as well.
They are. And I can tell you, in fact, West Virginia's been a leader in getting this. I've got a secret security clearance. I'm working on a top secret security clearances, as many other secretaries of states are, and we led that effort from West Virginia. I have a military background. I'd had a previous security clearance, and our own Department of Homeland Security wasn't sharing information with us 3 or 4 years ago because we didn't have clearances. I said, the only secret to those clearances is having an agency to sponsor you and a reason, and certainly election officials had that reason to be to have those clearances. So now we're getting those, and now that what that enables us to do is talk up and down the line, up to the FBI, National Security Agency, the CIA, those sorts of things. When they get information, they have briefings, and we go to the SCIF. That's a special center that's for secret information to be dispersed. All right, we do that at the Fusion Center in Charleston, and they have routine meetings now. So I'll give you an example. There was an Iranian general that we killed a couple of years ago named Soleimani. And the federal government said, hey, you ought to watch for that because if Iran has already put a worm inside your system, this might be the weekend they would turn it on. That came to us at 5:30 on a Friday afternoon. So I got hold of my chief information officer, Dave Tackett. He went into the Capitol, secured all of our equipment, made sure things were turned down and secure. Well, so that was an example of the top-down information flow going. Just a few days later, West Virginia, Ohio, and Colorado saw attempted infiltration attempts to try to penetrate our system. So we reported that up to the government. At that point, they put out a notification to all 50 states. So those are some things that are going on behind the scenes that I appreciate you asking about so that we can share with the people of West Virginia so they know that this sort of communication is now happening that didn't happen just a few short years ago. And so that's the long answer to your question, what is going on, why people should feel more secure in their elections now than they did perhaps a few years ago.
Wonderful. I mean, I feel better already, so this is good to know. And then, so what about people that don't even know if they are registered to vote? How do they get registered? Like, what's the process to make sure that they are good to go on Election Day?
Well, now let's get down to the nuts and bolts.
Yes.
GoVoteWV.com. That's the website. Everything related to elections is on that site, GoVoteWV.com. So they can go on there and they can look up their own individual registration. They can see whether they're registered. And let's say they want to change parties now. Let's say they've gotten married and changed a name. Let's say they have a new address. You can do that all online right now. So it's user-friendly, 24/7. You can get on there and change your registration. And it'll go to the county clerk, the appropriate county clerk, and they will then update your registration. Now, we are up against the deadline, October 18th.
October 18th.
That's the first deadline we need to talk about. So that's just a few days from now, okay? On Tuesday, and that's the last day to change your registration or to enter a new registration. After that, then the clerks verify that. And that's in state code. The state legislature wants to give those clerks 21 days to get ready for, make sure to verify that those people are who they say they are, they live where they say they are, and to get them the information to tell them where to go vote. So there's a reason for this.
Right, and most of this information can be found on the website as far as where to go to vote, how to get registered.
And you can also get a sample ballot right now. You can look at your ballot. There's some real important amendments, 4 amendments on this ballot. It's time to read that ahead of time so you don't go into the polling location and for the first time say, oh, what do these 4 amendments mean? And try to educate yourself at that point. It might be too late. So
most of, especially the Amendment 2. There's a lot going back and forth around Amendment 2 and the tax on cars. So yes, definitely being able to go and get those sample ballots. Now, what about if you actually arrive the day of and you're turned away? So something isn't matching up. What should someone do in that case? What would happen?
Nobody should be turned away. You should be able to vote no matter where you go. Now, it may not be the right precinct, and so they will give you a provisional ballot.
Okay.
So nobody should get turned away from a polling location. Like I said, you'll be given a provisional ballot. And what that means is the ballot won't be counted on that election day. What happens is 6 days later is canvassing. That's when they review those provisional ballots or absentee ballots that have come in after the fact. And the county commissioner, the board of canvassers, decides whether those votes count or not, and so on. So, but that's the importance of checking your registration ahead of time right now. Right. So I'm glad you're asking about this to let people know. If you have any question at all, go to that govotewv.com. And there's been a couple of changes here now. We lost a congressional member due to the census. The census data was late getting to us, so the clerks had a real scramble there before the primary. But we've now worked through that. And what that means is you may have been moved to a new precinct. We had to redraw those lines. We went from 67 multi-member districts to 100 single-member districts in the House of Delegates here in West Virginia. So all those lines had to be redrawn. And what that may mean for you as a voter, that you may be voting in a new location. If you are, the clerk will send you a postcard. That should have happened during the primary. But again, you can check all that at the website, govotewv.com, and it will drop a pin on a map and show you where your house is, where you vote.
Where you're supposed to go.
I can't emphasize enough that website. We've put a lot of effort into making that user-friendly.
Okay, wonderful. And then so for really quick, early voting, so you don't have to necessarily stand in the lines on November 8th. You can actually do early voting. So what's that period as well?
That starts on October 26th.
Okay.
It goes to November 5th. It's a 10-day period of early voting, and that includes 2 Saturdays. So do take advantage of that if you want to. You don't need a reason to. You just go vote early. Now, absentee voting is different. You have to have a reason, and you have to request an absentee ballot. So let's say you're going to be out of state on work or vacation, that sort of thing. It's already planned. You can request an absentee ballot, again, through that website or through your county clerk. Go and get an absentee application. That has to be in by November 2nd. So that's just 6 days prior. Don't wait till then. If you already know that you can't vote in person, either early or on election day, request that absentee ballot right now, and again, you can get it at that website.
Okay, so absentee ballot due date November 2nd, October 18th, last day to register to vote. Early voting October 26th through November the 5th.
Yes.
Okay, I think I got it.
Those are key dates. You got it. You nailed it. Thank you.
All right, and then just so that we can kind of wrap things up, what's like the one thing that you want all of our residents out there, all of our West Virginians to kind of remember?
I want people to vote. I want them to participate. The more people that participate, then the higher confidence we have in the elected officials, the higher confidence we have in the government, and the more people that participate, just we all have that civic engagement and involvement. And so there's a lot of complaining right now that America's divided, left and right and so forth. Don't complain if you don't go vote. So go vote. Now, it is the candidate's responsibility, the party's responsibility, the campaigns. They're the ones that are supposed to motivate people. It's my job and the county clerk's job to run a free, fair, clean election. But let's get out and vote, and that's why talking about this ahead of time is the best way to educate people. And as we mentioned before, 4 very important amendments on the ballot. Educate yourself before you go in. If you do that, if you go into the ballot box and you haven't studied it, 1, you're going to be confused, and 2, you may hold up some lines and so forth. We want to get those lines moving on election day. So go in. That's why we put the sample ballot up on the website, so you can practice one time and know who you're going to vote for and what you're going to vote for on election day.
Right, and go in with confidence, voting in confidence, and it sounds like your office is removing a lot of the barriers to make it possible so that people can go in and vote with confidence.
Absolutely. Easy to vote, hard to cheat.
Yep, sounds wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you stopping by.
Sure, thank you.
All right, and don't go away. We will be right back, obviously, with more news and sports after the break.